Our next graduate student is going to be Mr. Joshua Smee, a recent MA graduate, Department of Political Science, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences. Please join me welcoming Joshua.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'll try not to go over too much that's already been covered. This has been a really interesting and comprehensive morning. I'm now nervous, even though I'm done grad school, but I'm like revisiting how I felt when I was here a few years ago. But you'll have a fun time. I'm going to share maybe just a little bit about where I'm coming from on this, what my experience has been at MUN, what few lessons that might be of some use to some of you. And we'll see where we go from there. So I'll give you a picture just of where I'm coming from. It's maybe a bit of a different background than some of the other people who've spoken here today. So I came to MUN, as you're saying, I was one of those people who had forgotten how to study. I'd been out in the working world doing community development work for a lot of years before I came back to MUN. I was born on the mainland, but I've been living in St. John's for quite some time. I did not come to St. John's for school, so this became home first. Working for 4 years before coming back to my MA, and I came back not really intending on chasing down an academic career, but wanting to see just how we could get some really interesting, great research done. And I think we did with my project, and I think that's one thing to think about, is knitting your research in with community goals when you can. Because MUN has a really great focus on, especially on Newfoundland and Labrador, that's a really good angle to do some really creative stuff that's not going to just sit on a shelf when we're done here. There we go. So what brought me here actually was I was out working with one of the community projects that I work on, and we had an idea for a research project that there was no way we could have gotten done, just no way. It was demanded a much higher level of academic rigor than we had the capacity to do, and it was way outside of our ballpark. And so we thought, hey, I thought, hey, I'd been thinking about going back to school sometime. Why don't we see if we can turn a community project into a master's project? And that's what brought me here. And it was the chance to work with the people who I thought were really great at supporting this. So I'd run into my supervisor at a talk in this room and kind of zeroed in on that guy and went and knocked on his door a few weeks later and said, do you want to work together on this project? The other thing that mattered for me personally, I'm sure matters for lots of you guys, is that there was enough funding here so I did work part-time, but I could eat while doing my master's, and financial management is absolutely an incredibly important part of getting by for the next couple of years. And for me, I really did miss the whole education thing, and that's one thing I like to think about when I'm thinking about how I made it through grad school, I think reasonably successfully, is I really enjoyed being here. It was nice. The working world can suck. And suddenly someone was paying me to read books, and it was really exciting. And so, the stress is there, but at the same time, there's a real privilege to what we get to do here. And I totally agree with you, Francesca, on seeing that positive is an important way of getting through the times when you're tearing your hair out. So my personal project, I was actually looking at St. John's. So I was looking at neighborhoods in St. John's, how people's neighborhoods affected their social, civic lives, that kind of stuff. Fun project. It involved going out and doing like on-the-ground primary research. So if some of you live in town, you may have seen me with a clipboard chasing people for about 3 or 4 months a couple of years ago. It also meant that I wasn't on campus very much. So I live here, I had a job, I had my research off campus, so I was just kind of popping in when I could. And that has pros and cons. I think one of the things that we've been talking about is a lot of the on-campus support systems that I didn't always take as good advantage of as I could. At the same time, there are a lot of off-campus support systems, and there's a great off-campus life to the city that really helped me get through graduate school. The other thing that really helped me get through graduate school, and I really encourage people to do this, is presenting my work as often as I could in circumstances that made me uncomfortable. So there's the 3-minute thesis competition, and if you're funded by SSHRC, if you're in the arts, then there's the storytellers competition, which is essentially the same thing. Pitch what you're doing in 3 minutes or less. It is scary as all hell. It is incredibly useful. Working through that process a couple of times for both of those competitions was a really important thing for me, and I really encourage people to go out on a limb, even if standing in front of a room of people and doing that kind of thing makes you sick to your stomach. because it's really worth it. Work-life balance is hard. I was doing a lot of things while I was at MUN. I had 2 part-time jobs, small part-time jobs. I was on board. I was full-time here. I'm married. I'm still married, as far as I know. Relationships with your cohort of students really matter. So building those, and I'm not going to belabor this because I think everyone else has covered this really well, but investing some time early when you're just getting to know people pays off in spades, right? So for the next week or two, no one knows what's going on. Everyone's going to be interested in building friendships. Take advantage of that. This is one time when I think it is worth sacrificing a little bit of sleep, is early on in this process, so you make sure that you have a chance to go out, socialize, get to know the people you're going to be working with over the next few years. One other thing that really helped my work-life balance and hurt the planet Earth deeply is that I eventually got to a point where I was printing off almost every single thing I needed to read so that I could drag my readings out to the park or like sit on the beach. So I used to drive myself out to Middle Cove Beach where there's no internet and like not let myself come home until I'd finished my big stack of papers. And it didn't work for everybody, but you gotta, and it really did hurt my environmentalist heart, but I was trying to balance that against the fact that if I was sitting there on my laptop in the grad room, I would be either messing around on Facebook or just pulling my hair out because I wasn't outside. So think about those kind of coping strategies and think about how you can use some of the less actively engaged times when you're reading, not necessarily writing, as if not breaks, something feels kind of like a break. This might be just rationalizing it. Maybe this is kind of Stockholm syndrome here, I don't know. I think another point for me that was really important is finding the point of diminishing returns on our work. So by now, I really know myself that there's a point where I can put in, this much work to get this far in my project, but then to get the extra this far, I'd have to put in that much more work. And sometimes you need to find that cutoff and decide whether it's worth it, whether it's worth tearing your hair out over something. And sometimes it is, right? So sometimes you really have to get to the absolute best that you can possibly do. But I think one of the realistic things about being a grad student is that not always going to be possible. So finding out where you can get to good enough without going nuts is really important. I think the other thing for me that was really important on making grad school work was enjoying St. John's. So some of you guys are from town or at least from Newfoundland and know this place. Some of you are just getting to know it. Get out and enjoy it. It's a great town. There's a lot going on. People have spoken a lot about some of the opportunities provided on campus to get out. Even just, pick up the Overcast, that's the monthly paper, and see what's on the go. Go down to a concert, go for a walk, whatever it is. This is one of the most active small cities I've ever known. And it's a really great resource for us when we don't want to be reading or writing or doing all these hair-tearing out things. I'm not going to belabor the relationships matter point. We've covered that. They really do. I'd say one of the things that I've learned is that you really you can't be afraid to ask for things. So there's a ton of support available for you at all these different levels, both within your department, from your supervisor, from this whole long list that you've been shown, but you do have to be the one who walks out and asks for it. No one's gonna come knocking on your door and say, well, you looked a bit stressed last week, can we provide you with all these things? But the moment that you ask for help, or the moment that you ask for someone to get engaged in your project, people will jump to help you. And it's been really my experience that people have gone way out of their way to help me succeed and to help some cool projects happen as soon as I mentioned it to them and pitched it to them. But it was usually the responsibility to initiate that interaction is on us. On that, I would say the other thing is definitely be prepared to take charge of paperwork. So if you're doing a grant application or some big scholarship application, those kind of things, you probably will need about 16 signatures from about 16 different offices at the university. The only real way to get that done is to grab it and walk it around and find the people and talk to them in person. It's really easy to pass that off and to say, well, I'll just give this to my supervisor and he'll forward it along or she'll forward it along. But what I've found, I mean, MUN's a big place. It's a bureaucratic place sometimes. People will go out of their way, but you have to get in their face. is probably the polite way of putting that. That I am a notorious procrastinator myself. So I several times was running around at the last minute trying to get signatures on important applications. It always came through, but it always ended up me physically running around campus. And so I think it's just worth thinking about making sure that you're taking charge and that you have a plan and that you've written out a strategy for getting done what you want to get done, for applying for that amazing scholarship or that amazing award, and make sure that the onus is going to be on you to get it done. And like I said, take every opportunity to present in public. It's terrifying and it's super useful. So the Aldrich Conference is great, super supportive environment. The thesis competitions are great. There's things happening in the community. You know, if you're doing research that people find interesting, there's also lots of chances to talk about it off campus, and that's fun too, because that's a totally different environment. This doesn't apply to all of us, but I really think it's worth trying to pick a project that someone somewhere in the outside world, outside of academia, has some interest in, and that's actually a pretty wide range. And if you have a project like that, go out and have a chat with the community organizations and the people working on that stuff in St. John's, in Newfoundland, in Canada, wherever, because you'll find that people are really hungry for grad students who are working on a topic to come and work with their organization to help them advance a project. Like I work in the community sector most of the time, that's my day job, and it's like a dream scenario if a grad student knocks on my door and says, hey, I'm working on the thing that you're working on, can I do research and on that topic for you? And so people will be super happy. And that means that your work also gets some additional channels to get out into the world. That looks super nice on applications for scholarships, that kind of thing. And on that, I really think aiming high matters, right? Like, it's good practice to apply for every big, scary scholarship that we possibly can. It's a really great, I found it really great even at refining my ideas. Working through the proposal that I needed to do for all these scholarships made me make more sense of what I was trying to do, and it actually changed the work that I was doing the couple of times that I had to write 2 or 3 or 4 10-page proposal things. So even if you don't get them, even if you're shooting for the moon, just go for it, do it, it'll be fun. And your supervisor can give you a ton of support on that. And have fun, you know, like there's been, I think, a really great summary of the resources here, but my takeaway from the last couple of years that I spent in Mun was that it was a really fun time. I've built relationships that are gonna last a lifetime. I'm sure that's true of all of you. I got to work on a cool project, got to take some time away from the office to read and think and do all this kind of fun stuff, and to take advantage of these crazy amount of opportunities that are available on campus. So, you know, to each their own, you all have different styles, but there's a lot for you to have fun with. So I think you'll have a good time. And that's it. That's all I got.